Jonah lived alone on a cold planet. It was always snowing there and the sky was always gray. His house was small, made of metal and wood. It stood near a frozen lake that never melted, not even in summer. The wind was strong. The nights were long, and silence was his only friend. Years ago, Jonah was a soldier. He fought in big space wars and lost many friends. But the real pain did not come from war. It came from losing his wife. Her name was Aliyah, and she died giving birth to their child. The child didn't survive either. After that, Jonah left everything behind. He bought land on this lonely planet and built a quiet life. No neighbors, no noise, no memories, just snow and silence. Every day was the same. He woke up early, cut wood, fixed broken tools, and made simple meals. Sometimes he talked to Aliyah's picture. Sometimes he stood outside in the snow for hours, saying nothing at all. People from the city sometimes called him, offering him work or company. He always said no. His heart was frozen, just like the land around him. One night, Jonah sat near the fire, holding an old data pad. He didn't use it much, just to check the weather or fix machines. But that night he opened a message by mistake. It was from a dating service, one that matched humans with alien brides. He rolled his eyes and was about to delete it. But then he saw something strange. The message wasn't meant for him. It was a rejection letter sent to a woman named Mira. She had applied to be a bride for a human. But the reply was cold and cruel. "You have been rejected. Mira," it said, "humans prefer slim, gentle companions. You are too large, and your appearance does not meet our beauty standard. Please do not apply again." Jonah stared at the message for a long time. He felt something in his chest, a small pain, like an old scar waking up. He opened her file, just out of curiosity. Her picture appeared on the screen. She had big, soft eyes, dark skin like polished stone, and hair like thick ribbons. She wore a simple dress, and her shoulders were wide. Yes, she was bigger than most women, but there was a softness in her face, a deep sadness too, like she had stopped believing anyone could love her. Jonah didn't know why, but he couldn't look away. He zoomed in on her eyes. There was something familiar in them, a kind of quiet pain he knew very well. It was the same look he saw in the mirror every day. He read her short profile. She was from a mining moon. She could cook, repair basic machines, and sing in 3 languages. She liked snow, silence, and simple living. She said she didn't care about gifts, only wanted a home, a real one. Jonah leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Aliyah's face came into his mind. She used to say, "Love is not always loud." Jonah. Sometimes it's just sitting beside someone who won't leave. He opened his eyes, looked at Mira's picture again, and made a decision. He sent her a message, short and honest. "I saw your file by accident," he wrote, "but I understand your pain. If you still want a home, I have one. It's cold and quiet, but it's real." Then he waited. Hours passed, then a day, then 2, no reply. He thought maybe she didn't trust him. He wouldn't blame her. He almost gave up. But on the 3rd night, a message came. "Why would you want me?" She wrote. "You don't even know me," Jonah replied. "I know what it feels like to be left behind. I'm not looking for perfect, and I'm just looking for someone who stays." There was silence again. Then another message. "If you're serious, send me a ticket." Jonah didn't wait. He sold his old space rifle, one of the last things he kept from his soldier days. With the money, he bought her a one-way ticket to his frozen world. In the message, he wrote just one line. "If no one wants you, come to me." And with that, the cold fire in his heart sparked just a little. Something had changed. He didn't know if it was hope or danger. But for the first time in years, he was waiting for someone, and she was coming. Mira sat on the edge of her bunk in the lowest part of the space station. Around her were old cleaning bots, broken furniture, and water pipes that hissed all night. This place smelled like metal and forgotten dreams. She had been living here for months, not because she wanted to, but because she had nowhere else to go. She used to dream of being chosen by a human. She signed up for the human-alien match program with hope in her heart.
She believed love was bigger than shape or size.
She practiced cooking Earth food, learned English, and even tried smiling in the mirror. But nothing helped. She was rejected again and again. One man told her she looked like a walking pillow. Another said he didn't want a battle tank for a bride. The last rejection hurt the most. Not because it was cruel, but because it was quiet. No reply at all. Then the final message came. "Do not apply again," it said. You do not meet the physical standards requested by human clients. Her profile was locked. Her account closed. She was erased like she never tried at all. She didn't cry. She just stopped hoping every day. She cleaned the station floor. She moved slowly, carefully, trying not to take up too much space. People ignored her, or looked through her like she was air. But at night she still watched the stars. Some part of her still whispered, "Maybe someone will see me." Just once then came the message. She found it blinking on her old compad. At first she thought it was spam, or a mistake, but it wasn't. It was short, written with care. A man named Jonah had seen her file and said, "If no one wants you, come to me." He said he had a quiet home and a place for someone real. He didn't ask for beauty, just honesty. He didn't send her compliments, just warmth. Mira stared at the screen for hours. Her hands trembled. Was this a trick? Was someone playing with her heart? She wrote back, "Why would you want me?" "You don't know me," he replied. "I know what pain looks like. I know how it feels when the world moves on without you. I'm not afraid of silence, and I'm not afraid of you. If you want a home, I'll be waiting." She didn't sleep that night. She walked through the silent hallway, heart heavy, mind spinning. Could this be real? The next morning another message came. A one-way ticket, paid for and ready. No questions, no promises, just one line, "Come home." 2 words that hit her harder than any rejection ever had. She packed her things, just one small bag. She didn't own much, just clothes, a few books, and an old stone from her mother's planet. As she boarded the transport shuttle, people stared. Some whispered. Some laughed softly, but Mira held her head high. Not because she believed she was beautiful, but because someone, somewhere, believed she was worth the risk. She took the seat near the back and stared at the stars through the window. Every minute took her farther from the place where no one wanted her, and closer to the man who said she was enough. Her heart was full of questions. What if he changed his mind when he saw her in person? What if she disappointed him? What if she wasn't good at being a wife? But even with all the fear, there was something stronger. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe this time someone would see her. Not as a mistake, not as too much or too little, but as a woman, as a soul. When the shuttle landed, the sky outside was white with snow. The air looked cold and sharp like crystal. Mira's hands shook as she picked up her bag and walked toward the door. She had no idea what kind of man Jonah really was. She only knew that he opened his heart to a stranger no one else wanted. And that alone made him different from every man she had ever known. As she stepped onto the frozen ground, she saw him. He stood alone near a small hover cart, wearing old clothes and a scarf that flapped in the wind. He didn't wave or smile, he just looked at her and didn't look away. Not even once, and that for her was the beginning of everything. The wind howled like a wild animal as Jonah waited near the landing zone. Snow blew across the ground in thick white waves. He pulled his coat tighter, eyes fixed on the sky. His hands were cold, but his heart beat like fire. He hadn't felt this kind of nervousness in years. He didn't know what Mira would look like in real life. He only saw a picture, a voice, a quiet sadness in her eyes, but she was coming anyway. He had offered her a place to stay, a home now, he wondered. Was he enough for her? Was he making a mistake? Above him, the clouds split as the shuttle came down through the storm. Its lights blinked like stars falling from heaven. The engines roared, shaking the ground. Jonah took a slow breath, snow crunching under his boots as he stepped forward. The shuttle doors opened with a hiss, and people started walking out. Some were travelers, some were traders. Then he saw her. Mira stepped out last. Her body was wrapped in a coat 2 sizes too small. She held a small bag close to her chest. Her eyes scanning the frozen land, she looked unsure, almost ready to turn around and go back. Jonah didn't move. He let her see him first. Let her decide. Her eyes locked on him. No words passed between them, just silence, but in that silence, something unspoken moved between them. She didn't run and he didn't flinch. He walked slowly toward her. The snow fell between them like a curtain, soft and endless. When he reached her, he didn't say much. He just held out a thicker coat and said, "You'll freeze in that." She hesitated, then took the coat with both hands. Her fingers brushed his for a second, warmth in the cold. He helped her zip it up, careful and slow. Still no one spoke. Then he took her bag and motioned toward the hover cart. "It's a bit of a ride," he said, voice deep and calm. She nodded, her face unreadable as they rode through the snow. The wind pushed hard, the sky darkened, and the storm grew stronger. Jonah glanced at her. She was shivering, But not from the cold, something deeper. Fear maybe, or doubt. You all right? He asked, keeping his eyes on the path. She didn't answer right away, then she said, I thought you'd turn around when you saw me. Jonah looked at her then. Really looked. I sent the ticket after I saw your face, he said. I don't scare easy. For the first time, a small smile touched her lips. It was gone in a second. But he saw it, and it was enough. They drove in silence again, the storm rising like a beast. Trees bent, snow swirled, and the world disappeared into white. Jonah slowed the cart, careful not to tip it. The cabin was still far, and the wind was getting worse suddenly. The hovercart lights flickered. The engine coughed once, twice, then died. Jonah cursed softly, trying to restart it. Nothing. Mira looked around, eyes wide. Is this normal? She asked. No, Jonah said, stepping out into the storm. Stay inside. He opened the back panel, snow stinging his hands as he tried to fix the wires. Mira sat quietly, staring out into the white wall around them. Then she saw something. A flicker like a shadow moving behind the trees. Her heart jumped. Jonah, she called out. There's someone out there. He stood up quickly. Snow on his shoulders, he followed her gaze, but saw nothing. Still, his old instincts kicked in. He reached under the seat, pulling out a worn blaster. Stay close, he said. He managed to get the engine running again. Barely. The hovercart moved slow, the path hard to see. Jonah's eyes kept scanning the trees. Something was out there, watching, waiting, finally. Through the storm, the cabin came into view. Lights glowed in the windows like fireflies in a cave. Jonah parked the cart and helped Mira down. As they stepped inside, warmth wrapped around them. The fire was still burning from earlier. Jonah dropped her bag by the door and gave her space. You can rest here, he said. I'll make tea. Mira walked slowly through the cabin, eyes touching everything. There were photos on the wall of another woman. Smiling in the sun, Mira didn't ask, but she knew. Jonah saw her looking and said nothing. Just placed 2 cups of tea on the table and sat down. For a while they didn't talk. They just listened to the wind cry outside. But inside the silence felt different. Not empty, but shared then outside the window. Something moved, a shape, tall and dark. Watching the cabin from the woods. Neither of them saw it, but it was there, waiting. Mira woke to the sound of wind scratching at the windows. She sat up slowly, still wrapped in the thick blanket Jonah had given her. The fire in the main room still burned softly, casting shadows on the wooden walls. The cabin was warm inside, but she felt a cold deep in her chest. Not from the weather, but from fear. Jonah had already woken. She found him outside chopping firewood. Steam rising from his breath, he looked at her and gave a nod. Not a smile, just a quiet welcome. She returned the nod and stood in the doorway. Arms wrapped around herself, behind her the cabin waited. Silent and full of old air, a house with 2 rooms, and one of them still locked. Later that morning, Jonah showed her around. This is the water tank, he said. You'll need to check it daily. She followed him quietly, memorizing every corner, every button, every switch. There was no heater, just fire. No robots, just tools. Everything here needed care. Needed hands, needed presence. She liked that inside. She began to clean without being asked. She wiped windows, washed cups, and folded the small pile of clean clothes. Jonah watched her for a while, then went back outside. He didn't ask her why she was working, and she didn't ask him what he was thinking. At night they sat near the fire. The wind cried outside, but the silence between them was soft, not sharp. Jonah cooked simple food, boiled roots. Dried meat and broth Mira offered to cook next time, and he nodded again. No questions. She was used to people asking her to stay quiet. Jonah didn't ask that, he simply gave her space. But one thing stayed closed, the second room. It was near the back of the cabin. The door always shut, dust gathered at the edges, and the key was never visible. Mira didn't touch it, but she felt its weight every time she walked past. Something inside that room held Jonah's past like a secret locked in ice. One night after dinner, she asked gently, "Was that her room?" Jonah looked at the door for a long moment, then nodded. "Yes," he said, voice low. "My wife." No more words came after that. Mira didn't push, she knew the shape of grief. Hers was different, but just as deep. Days passed, and they fell into a rhythm. Jonah worked outside. Mira took care of the inside. They shared meals, shared tools. But not their stories, not yet still. Something began to grow between them. Not love, not yet, but something warm and waiting. Like sunlight behind clouds, one afternoon, Mira found an old box in the cabinet. Inside were photo chips, a music stick, and a broken bracelet. She didn't open them, just closed the box and placed it back carefully. She didn't need to see the past to respect it. That evening, as she sang softly while washing dishes, Jonah paused in the doorway. The song was in an old dialect, not common anymore. He listened closely, eyes narrowing in memory. "My wife used to sing that," he said slowly. Mira turned to him surprised. "My mother taught it to me," she said. "It's a comfort song from the mining colonies." Jonah didn't speak for a while. Then he said, "Funny how sounds survive across planets." That night, neither of them spoke again, but both stayed awake longer than usual, listening to the quiet sound of the fire breathing. The next morning, something changed. Jonah placed a mug on the table and looked at her directly. "You've been good to this place," he said. Mira blinked, unsure how to respond. "No one has touched that room since Ilya passed," he said, nodding toward the locked door. "But last night, I dreamed she opened it. She smiled at me and said, 'It's time.'" He stood, walked to a drawer, and took out a small silver key. He held it in his hand, staring at it like it weighed 1,000 memories. Then he placed it gently on the table in front of Mira. "I'll unlock it tonight," he said. "You don't have to come in, but I don't want to open it alone." That whole day felt different. The wind was softer. The snow seemed slower. Mira moved through the cabin like it was alive, not just a place but a heart opening. And when night came, they stood side by side in front of the door. Jonah slid the key into the lock, his hand shaking just a little. The door creaked open slowly, and the smell of old flowers and time filled the room. Inside there was a bed, a painting, and a music box that hadn't been touched in years. Mira stayed at the door, silent, watching him step into his memories. He touched the edge of the bed and whispered, "I'm sorry I stayed away so long." Then he turned to Mira, eyes tired but clearer than before. "She'll always be here," he said, "but maybe there's room for someone else too." Mira didn't answer. She just stepped beside him, not to replace what was lost, but to honor it, and to begin something new outside. The wind quieted inside. The house with 2 rooms finally breathed as one. The snow was quiet that morning, too quiet. Jonah stepped outside with a mug of hot tea in his hand. The wind was low, the sky gray, and the trees stood still like statues. Something in the air felt off, like the world was holding its breath. Inside the cabin, Mira was humming softly as she folded the blanket on the couch. She had just finished making breakfast, warm root stew and flatbread. She noticed Jonah standing near the window, staring into the trees. "You see something?" she asked gently. Jonah didn't answer right away. He squinted into the white distance, then finally said, "I don't know. Maybe just my imagination." But deep inside, he didn't believe that. He had been a soldier long enough to know what watching eyes felt like. Later that day, Mira went to check the chicken coop near the back fence. She noticed footprints in the snow, ones that didn't belong to Jonah or her. They were long, narrow, and deep, too far apart for a casual walk, more like someone was running or stalking. She rushed back to the cabin, heart racing. Jonah listened as she told him what she saw. He didn't panic, but the look on his face changed, quiet and sharp like steel under calm water. He went to the closet and pulled out an old rifle. It was worn but clean, the kind a man keeps even when he hopes never to use it again. "Stay inside," he told her, voice low. "If anyone knocks, don't answer until I return." She nodded, but her hands trembled. She had known fear before, on the space station, in the rejection rooms, but this was different. This was fear mixed with the feeling of finally having something to lose. Jonah followed the prints for nearly half a mile. They weaved between trees and vanished near a frozen stream. He found broken branches, small signs of someone hiding there recently, but no person, only silence. He returned to the cabin and locked every door and window. They didn't speak much that evening. They just sat near the fire, listening, waiting. Jonah kept the rifle nearby, and Mira watched the shadows move along the walls. Later that night, Mira couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about those footprints, about how someone was watching them. She sat near the fire, holding the old stone from her mother's world. Then she spoke, voice soft but clear. "There's something I never told you." Jonah looked at her, waiting. She swallowed hard and said, "I wasn't just rejected because of my size. I was part of a program, a test project. Some scientists wanted to build a stronger breed of alien companions. They said we needed to be bigger, better, tougher. She paused, eyes full of old pain. They trained us, then shut it all down when it didn't look perfect. They called us too much, too big, too expensive. Most of the others disappeared. I ran. Jonah didn't interrupt. He just listened. I think they're still looking for me, she whispered. Or maybe they're trying to erase us completely. The fire crackled between them. Jonah finally said, then they'll have to get through me first. The next day, strange signs began to appear. Marks on trees, a sound like metal scraping near the shed, a light blinking deep in the woods at night. Too steady to be natural. Jonah set up traps, silent alarms, and motion sensors he hadn't used in years. He gave Mira a small stun blade and taught her how to hold it. She didn't want to take it, but she did. She was tired of hiding by the third night. The snow returned, thick and fast. The whole world turned white again, covering the tracks, the traps, everything. But something still moved out there. Jonah saw it from the window. A tall shape just at the tree line. Too still for an animal, too wrong for a person. He didn't chase it this time, instead he waited. He and Mira sat close that night. She leaned her head against his shoulder without asking. He didn't move away, they didn't speak, but the silence was strong. Like a promise between two broken pieces trying to heal. Suddenly a sharp noise came from outside, a crack, then a soft thud. Jonah jumped up, grabbing the rifle. He peeked through the window and saw something dark lying near the fence. A drone, small, round, and blinking red. Not a scout drone from the market. This was military grade, someone had found them. He picked it up carefully and placed it on the table. Mira stared at it, her face pale. There will be more, she said. Jonah nodded, jaw tight. Then we'll be ready, he said. Outside. The wind screamed louder than ever, but inside 2 people sat side by side, not as strangers. Not as a broken man and a rejected bride, but as something stronger. Something beginning and whatever was coming. It would have to face them both. The blinking red light didn't stop. It kept pulsing from the drone like a heartbeat that didn't belong there. Mira stood frozen, her eyes locked on the small machine sitting on the wooden table. Jonah didn't speak, he just stared at it. Calm on the outside, but inside his thoughts raced like fire. He had seen drones like this before, long ago during the war. They were used to track, to listen, and to lead hunters to their targets. It meant one thing. They were already marked. Already found, they're close, Mira whispered. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. I told you. They don't just give up. Jonah nodded slowly, his jaw tight. Then we make it hard for them, he said. They're not taking you. Outside, the snow had stopped, the wind rested, like the storm itself was waiting for what came next. Jonah began to prepare. He took down old crates, unlocked a secret panel in the floor. Inside were weapons, supplies, armor, things he swore he'd never need again, but now, every promise he made to forget the past was gone, because Mira wasn't just a guest anymore. She was part of his world, and he would fight to protect it. Mira helped without question. She cleaned weapons, charged batteries, and checked power cells. Jonah taught her how to shoot. How to move in silence. She learned fast, too fast. There was a soldier inside her that had been hiding for a long time. Where did you learn all this? Jonah asked one night as they set up sensors around the cabin. They trained us, she replied. Back then, when we were just test subjects, they wanted us to be good at everything, but also silent, obedient. I remembered the training, she added, but I never used it. Until now. Jonah looked at her with new eyes. Not as someone fragile, not as someone broken, but as someone powerful, forged in pain but still standing. He respected her deeply. That night the alarm triggered. A soft beep from the window sensor, then silence. Jonah grabbed his rifle. Mira picked up the stun blade. He nodded once, she nodded back, no panic. Just readiness. They moved outside quietly. Boots crunching softly on the thin snow. Behind the tool shed they saw them. 3 figures in dark armor, half hidden behind trees. They carried shotguns and scanning rods. One of them spoke into a headset. Target located, he said. Preparing to extract, Jonah stepped out and aimed his rifle. Wrong house, he called. The men turned sharply, surprised. One fired. The bolt missing Jonah by inches, he shot back. Clean and fast. One man dropped. Mira moved like a shadow. Circling behind the trees, she struck the second man from behind. Knocking him cold, the third tried to run, but Mira was faster. She tackled him into the snow, pressing the blade to his neck. His helmet rolled off, revealing a young face, scared and confused. "I was just following orders," he whispered. Mira looked into his eyes. "They always are," she said quietly, then knocked him out with the hilt of the blade after it was over. They dragged the bodies to the shed and tied them up. Jonah checked their gear, scanners, tags and orders. The documents were clear. Subject Mira 27, it read. Retrieve for deconstruction. If resistance is found, terminate. Mira stared at the words, her face pale. "They didn't want me back to fix me," she said. "They just want me gone." Jonah clenched his fists. "Then we make them fail," he said. Again and again, they didn't sleep that night. Instead, they reinforced the windows, set up more traps. Mira rewired the drone, turning it into a fake signal device. If they came again, they'd follow a ghost signal, far from the real cabin. By morning, the snow started again, soft, quiet, peaceful, like nothing had happened, but inside, everything had changed. Mira stood stronger, her eyes sharper. Jonah walked with purpose, no longer hiding from who he used to be. As they sat by the fire, Mira turned to him. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You don't owe me anything." Jonah didn't answer right away. He looked at her, really looked, then said, "Because when you came, this house felt alive again, and because no one else fought for you. So I will." She didn't cry. She just nodded, but in her chest something soft and warm began to grow. Not just safety, but trust, and outside, in the frozen woods. Others were coming, stronger, faster, more dangerous, but this time, Mira wouldn't run and Jonah wouldn't hide. They were no longer just a man and a guest, they were a unit, a team, a beginning, and when the enemy returned, they'd learn something new. She wasn't alone anymore, and neither was he. The snow had stopped. The wind had gone quiet. The world outside the cabin was soft and white, like a blank page ready for something new. Inside, the fire crackled gently. Jonah sat at the table, polishing the rifle, not because he needed to, but because it helped him think. Mira stood by the window, watching the trees. She had changed. Not in shape, but in spirit. Her back was straighter, her eyes clearer. She didn't hide anymore, not from the world, not from herself. The men they had captured were long gone. Jonah had sent them away with broken pride and a warning. "If you come again, you won't leave." They didn't argue. They just ran, but Mira knew it wouldn't be the last time. There would always be someone out there trying to erase her kind, to control what didn't fit their perfect image. But she wasn't afraid anymore, because now she had someone who stood with her. Later that day, a small transport landed near the old landing pad. It wasn't a threat. This one had no weapons. Inside were 3 people from Mira's past. One of them was an older woman with tired eyes. "Mira?" the woman said softly, stepping down from the ship. Mira's breath caught in her throat. "Aunt Leanie," she whispered. They hugged for a long time. No words, just hearts remembering each other. The others with her were survivors too, like Mira. Hidden for years, waiting, hoping, and now they had found each other again. Jonah watched quietly from a distance. He didn't interrupt. He knew this part belonged to her that evening. They shared food around the fire. Stories were told, laughter returned. The survivors talked of building a safe place. A home where no one would be measured by weight, shape, or skin. A place for those rejected by the systems that built and broke lives. Later, after the visitors returned to their ship, Mira sat beside Jonah on the steps of the cabin. The stars were bright and the night was calm. "They want me to go with them," she said quietly. "They want to start over somewhere safe." Jonah didn't answer at first. He just stared at the sky, then said, "I understand. You belong with people who know your pain." Mira turned her head, looking at him. "But I found someone who knows my heart," she whispered. He looked at her then, eyes tired but full of light. "You don't owe me anything, Mira," he said softly. She smiled. "No," she said, "but I want to stay." He took her hand, not like a hero holding a trophy, but like a man holding something precious. "I still talk to Elia sometimes," he admitted. "In my mind. She was the first to teach me love. But if she were here now, I think she'd want me to live again." Mira nodded. "I don't want to be her replacement," she said. Jonah shook his head. "You're not," he said. "You're my second chance." The next morning, something beautiful happened. Jonah walked to the back of the cabin and opened the second room again. This time he didn't cry. Instead, he placed a photo of Elia on the shelf and beside it, Mira's stone from her mother's world. 2 lives, 2 memories, side by side, not replacing but sharing. Then he turned the room into a nursery, not because Mira was expecting a child yet, but because they believed in the future, and when 2 people believe, anything is possible. Weeks passed. Spring began to whisper beneath the snow. Plants started peeking through the frozen soil. The cabin, once a place of silence, now echoed with voices, music, and laughter. Jonah added another chair on the porch. Mira painted stars on the ceiling, and every evening, they sat outside holding hands, dreaming out loud. One night, Mira leaned against his shoulder and asked, "Do you think the world will ever stop judging people by how they look?" Jonah sighed, then smiled. "I think the world's too big to fix all at once," he said. "But we fixed our little part of it." She nodded, and that was enough. From far above, a new drone passed silently over their land, but this one wasn't watching. It was recording something rare. A story not of war, but of healing, not of loss, but of second chances. And in a house with 2 rooms filled with warmth and scars, a man who had once lived only with ghosts now shared his life with a woman who had once been told she was too much. Together they were just right, and their story was only beginning.